My name is Amy Hyde, and I'm going to be reading for my close reading text, The Moon Seems to Change. It's by Franklin M. Branley and illustrated by Barbara and Ed Emberley. I chose this book because I'm going to be doing a unit on moon and how the moon changes for my first graders for our science unit. I chose this book over other ones because I liked the way that the author used pictures to support this very abstract concept for first graders, and I liked the words that the author chose to use are very simple and down-to-earth words that I know my first graders will be able to handle with a little bit of support. The level of this text is about a level O, which is much too hard for my students to grasp on their own. I don't have any students who are able to read at a level O, so this will be a read aloud, and I will be supporting their reading or supporting their understanding of this text while we're reading it. I'm going to finish the rest of this video by pretending like I'm speaking to my first graders, so enjoy listening to my lesson for first graders. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we're going to start learning about the moon and how the moon changes. We just got finished talking about things that we already know about the moon, and now let's read this book and see if we can learn some new things about the moon. This book is called The Moon Seems to Change. Tonight, take a look at the sky. See if the moon is there. It may be big and round. It is a full moon. Boys and girls, I noticed that in this book, the author does something interesting. This author makes sure that he tells us something, but then gives us a picture to help us understand what he's talking about. On this page, he says, it may be big and round. It is a full moon. And then he shows us a picture with a label, full, to show us what a full moon looks like. He does it again here. Let's keep reading. Maybe you will see only part of it. It may be a quarter moon. There it is, a picture of the quarter moon. Or it may be only a little sliver. It is called a crescent moon. Again, there's a picture. This is very helpful. This helps me to understand what each of these kinds of moon phases looks like. As the nights go by, you can see changes in the moon. After the moon is full, you see less and less of it. There are 3 or 4 nights with no moon at all. Then you see more and more of it. The moon seems to change. You know, when I was reading the author's words here, it made me stop for a minute because I was thinking about what the author said. He says, the moon seems to change. But when I was reading about the way the moon looks, it made it seem like it definitely does change. But here he says, seems to change. And that word seems makes me think, maybe it doesn't actually change. The author used this word seems to make my brain stop and think about what he's really trying to say. I bet that if I keep reading, I'll find out some more about this seems to change idea. It really doesn't. It seems to change because the moon goes around Earth. There it is. He says it seems to change because it doesn't really change. And then he tells us why. It seems to change because the moon goes around the Earth. Let's keep reading. As it goes around, we see more of it. The moon gets bigger. It is a waxing moon. Or we see less of it. The moon gets smaller. It is a waning moon. On this page, the author introduces some science words to us. Let's take a look at them. He says waxing moon and waning moon. This author, though, did something to help us understand those science words better. When we're reading, we can see that he says, as it goes around, we see more of it. The moon gets bigger. He explains what's happening first, and then he tells us what the science word is to help us understand it. And then he does it again. Or we see less of it. The moon gets smaller. It is a waning moon. He tells us what it means first, and then he tells us the science word. Authors do this often to help the people who are reading their books to understand what's happening, especially if it's something that they don't really have a lot of experience with. he also adds these pictures at the bottom to explain to us what a waxing moon looks like. He told us as it goes around, we see more of the moon gets bigger. And in these pictures, we see the moon getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as we go along. And then on these pictures on the bottom, it says waning moon, and we see the moon getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as the pictures go along. This author really wants us to understand how the moon works, and he adds a bunch of things into his book to help us see in our minds what it is that's making the moon seem to change. We're going to keep reading more about the moon, but I want you to keep in mind these things that the author does when you're reading books about the moon and when you're reading books on your own, to make sure that you're looking for those clues that the author gives you to help you understand a story better.